The National Coordinator of the National Brands Development and Made in Nigeria's Special Project Office, George Nwabueze, has denied allegations that he ran a fake federal agency. Nwabueze says the office is a project unit under the supervision of the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation and has existed since 2010. His response follows an announcement by the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission that President Bola Tinubu had ordered his arrest over the alleged illegal operation. The ICPC alleged that Nwabueze operated the outfit with the involvement of senior public servants in the OSGF. Nwabueze has rejected the allegation, pointing to an appointment letter he posted online as evidence of the officer's official status. Now, to discuss this, we are joined by legal practitioner Tohwo Oseruvwoja. Tohwo, thank you so much for joining us on the news. Now, for some weeks, just weeks after the Presidential Foreign Intervention Promotion Council scandal, we have yet another one rocking the presidency. How could someone allegedly establish a fake agency inside a powerful government office without multiple layers of administrative checks detecting it? How do you think that happened, Tohwo?
Good afternoon. You can understand that based on the name of that purported agency, you discover that it's not an agency per se, because I've read the letter posted by Nwabueze. You know that is like a committee or a task force set up as at that time. Because if you recall, I think the Secretary to the Government of the Federation then was Mahmoud Ahmed, and the President was Goodluck Jonathan, and Nigeria was marking its 50th independence anniversary. Situations like that, committees can be set up without legislative backing. The president has such executive power. If you look at Section 5 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the president has such a power, and such a power can be delegated to the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. So if a committee is set up in that nature, those committees or task force or advisory bodies, as it may be, can only last for a temporary purpose, for the purpose of achieving that a particular task. But for the committee this said, I won't call it agency, because if you look at the name and if you look at the timing it was said to have been established, you will discover that it's for a specific purpose. But for it to have run through 16 years thereabout, I think it's something successive governments over time would have looked at, and maybe we also need to question the State House of Assembly, the National House of Assembly for the oversight function, oversight duties. And I'll give you a good example of some of these committees in place. If you recall, in 2014, during when Nigeria was celebrating its centenary anniversary of the amalgamation of 1914, I could recall then that they were setting of this kind of committees or presidential task force set up. A good example is, if you recall, the centenary city in Abuja. I know that the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, distinguished Senator Pius was the person spearheading that drive. And behind that drive, there are several committees that was put in place, which elapsed immediately the celebration runs out. Another one again I can also recall, and I think was also was this issue of economic, it has to do with small-scale businesses, and I think I participated in Kano, where it was under the office of the Vice President, whereby this issue of small claim courts came into existence. So these are some of these committees that can be established by the office of the president, even through the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, but they are not agencies that ought to last more than a given specific period. But for this to have run for 16 years is a problem.
Permit me to butt in here, but does this point to an individual failure, or does it expose a deeper weakness in Nigeria's, bureaucratic control and verification systems?
That's not to do with individual failures. It has to do with institutional and governmental failures in terms of check and balances. Because I believe if the National Assembly is doing the oversight function properly, Do you understand? This would have been picked long before now. Then if the office of the secretary to the government of the federation, during their meetings, during their budgeting, they would have picked this long before now. But you could see that it is not just individual failure, but is an institutional failure that need to be looked into holistically.
Now, at what point does administrative negligence, become a criminal liability for public officials who may have enabled such an operation?
The point in which they assess government, public fund, and the point in which they assess public fund, because for this institution to have run for 16 years, and his appointment was renewed again, you discover that I think at that point in time, it can be triggered to be a criminal offense because they have access to public fund, which is not allocated to them. Then you also understand the fact that you also understand the fact that at the point where did they get the money in running this, I won't call it agency, and I'll still maintain the fact that it won't be called agency assets to the best of my knowledge and from what I've gathered thus far. From what end were they receiving this public fund in running these agencies or these committees? So it's an issue that we need to look at. And I think at this point in time, so many people need to be picked out outside those senior public servants that has been suspended. I think some political office holder need to be questioned and need to be held accountable at this point in time.
Now, Tohwo, could this scandal undermine public confidence in legitimate government agencies and official communications?
Yes, definitely it is. It is, as a matter of fact. And if it were to be in the UK, I think would have also undermined the current administration in terms of transparency, in terms of accountability. So there's every tendency that even as these are unfolding, international organizations, international bodies, the international communities are looking at how they relate to public institutions. And I can tell you that so many people here, even in the UK, have seen situations whereby an authentic document from a federal parastatals are questions here in the UK. And this would have been triggered another round of international check when it comes to official documents emanating from Nigeria, because this is one too many, particularly in this administration.
So initially we had the PFIPC case and now this one. Do you think this demonstrates that Nigeria's corruption problem is no longer simply about, diverting public funds, but it's also about manipulating machinery of government itself?
When you manipulate machineries of government, when you manipulate the machineries of government, it's for purpose of diverting public fund. That is just the simple truth. Because if you look at it holistically, for 16 years thereabouts, they've been allocated money, they've been spending money, they've been running activities for one way or the other. So it has to do with manipulation. It has to do with a diversion of public fund. Then I will also make you understand that they need to go back to 1999 when this into this democratic era. Let's see all these committees, because I won't lie, there are several committees that might have been set up by the federal government that are domiciled in the eyes of the law, which obviously they are not recognized, but people, one way or the other, dust those files because they've not been gazetted to be non-existence. They dust those files and rebrand it and use it to what? Siphon money. It's just like the ghost worker scandal of 18. This one is to the highest of it all, going into maybe committees that has been used, establish a particular purpose that are domiciled now that ought not to exist. They not outlive their purpose. So that's just the simple truth.
Thank you so much, Tohwo Oseruvwoja, for having this conversation with us.